Before the Fellowship was the greatest story you've never heard. I'm Dan.
I'm Greg.
I'm Cameron.
Join us as we read and react to the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. Last time, we continued chapter 21. Morgoth sends forces southward again. Túrin and Beleg, the helm and the bow, won fame for their heroics. Through this, Morgoth learned the whereabouts of the son of Húrin. Mim betrayed them and led a band of orcs to Amon-Ruth. The orcs slew many of the men at night and captured Túrin. Mim took up Anglachel to slay Beleg, but the injured elf fought him off, and Mim fled. Beleg healed and pursued Túrin's captors. He encountered Gwindor, an elf of Nargothrond, who was captured in Ninnaeth Arnoead. That's a really hard one to say. But escaped through secret tunnels. Gwindor joined Beleg, and they found the orc camp and Túrin tied up. Beleg cut his bonds, but pricked his foot, waking Túrin in fear and rage. Túrin took Anglachel and killed Beleg, thinking him an enemy. A fierce storm drove away the orcs. Gwindor and Túrin buried Beleg with his bow, but took Anglachel and the Lembas. Gwindor led Túrin to Ethel Ivrin, where he was finally able to grieve the loss of Beleg, and was healed of his madness. Then they reached Nargothrond. Today we continue chapter 21, beginning on page 209 of the second edition. At first, his own people did not know Gwindor, who went out young and strong, and returned now seeming as one of the aged among mortal men, because of his torments and his labours. But Finduilas, daughter of Orodreth the king, knew him and welcomed him, for she had loved him before Ninnaeth, and so greatly did Gwindor love her beauty that he named her Flourishes, which is the gleam of the sun on the pools of Ivrin. For Gwindor's sake, Túrin was admitted with him to Nargothrond, and he dwelt there in honour. But when Gwindor would tell his name, Túrin checked him, saying, I am Gwen, the son of Umath, which is the blood-stained son of ill fate, a hunter in the woods. And the elves of Nargothrond questioned him no more. In the time that followed, Túrin grew high in favour with Orodreth, and well nigh all hearts were turned to him in Nargothrond, for he was young, and only now reached his full manhood. And he was in truth the son of Morwen Elthwen, and to look upon, dark-haired and pale-skinned, with grey eyes, and his face more beautiful than any other among mortal men in the elder days. His speech and bearing were that of the ancient kingdom of Doriath, and even among the elves he might be taken for from the great houses of Noldor. Therefore many called him Andan Edthel, the Elfman. The sword Anglachel was forged anew for him by cunning smiths of Nargothrond, and though ever black its edges shone with pale fire, and he named it Gurthang, Iron of Death. So great was his prowess and skill in warfare on the confines of the guarded plain that he himself became known as Mormegil, the Black Sword. And the elves said, The Mormegil cannot be slain, save by mischance, or an evil arrow from afar. Therefore they gave him dwarf mail to guard him, and in a grim mood he found also in the armories a dwarf mask, all gilded, and he put it on before battle, and his enemies fled before his face. Then the heart of Finduilas was turned from Gwindor, and against her will her love was given to Túrin. But Túrin did not perceive what had befallen. And being torn in heart, Finduilas became sorrowful, and she grew wan and silent. But Gwindor sat in dark thought. And on a time he spoke to Finduilas, saying, Daughter of the house of Finarfin, let no grief lie between us. For though Morgoth has laid my life in ruin, you I still love. Go whither love leads you, yet beware. It is not fitting that the elder children of Ilúvatar should wed with the younger. Nor is it wise, for they are brief and soon pass, to leave us in widowhood while the world lasts. Neither will fate suffer it, unless it be once or twice only, for some high cause of doom that we do not perceive. But this man is not barren. A doom indeed lies on him, as seeing eyes may well read in him, but a dark doom. Enter not into it, and if you will, your love shall betray you to bitterness and death. For hearken to me. Though he be indeed a Glaurung, son of Umarth, his right name is Túrin, son of Húrin, whom Morgoth holds in Angband, whose kin he has cursed. Doubt not the power of Morgoth Barglir. Is it not written in me? Then Finduilas sat long in thought, but at last she said only, Túrin, son of Húrin, loves me not, nor will. Now when Túrin learnt from Finduilas of what had passed, he was wrathful, and he said to Gwindor, In love I hold you for rescue and safekeeping. But now you have done ill to me, friend, to betray my right name and call my doom upon me, from which I would lie hid. But Gwindor answered, The doom lies in yourself, not in your name. When it became known to Orodreth that the Mormogil was in truth the son of Húrin, Thalion, he gave him great honour, and Túrin became mighty among the people of Nargothrond. But he had no liking for their manner or warfare, of ambush and stealth and secret arrow, and he yearned for brave strokes and battle in the open, and his counsels weighed with the king, ever the longer the more. In those days the elves of Nargothrond forsook their secrecy, and went openly into battle, and great store of weapons were made, and by the counsel of Túrin the Noldor built a mighty bridge over the Narog from the doors of Felagund for the swifter passage of their arms. Then the servants of Angband were driven out of all the land between Narog and Sirion eastward and westward to the Nenning and the desolate Falas. And though Gwindor spoke ever against Túrin in the council of the king, holding it an ill policy, he fell into dishonour, and none heeded him, for his strength was small, and he was no longer forward in arms. Thus Nargothrond was revealed to the wrath and hatred of Morgoth. But still, at Túrin's prayer his true name was not spoken. And though the fame of his deeds came into Doriath and to the ears of Thingol, rumour only spoke of the black sword of Nargothrond. In that time of respite and hope, when because of the deeds of the Mormogil the power of Morgoth was stemmed west of Sirion, Morwen fled at last from Dorlomin with Nienor, her daughter, and adventured the long journey to Thingol's halls. There new grief awaited her, for she found Túrin gone, and to Doriath there had come no tidings since the dragon helm had vanished from the lands west of Sirion. But Morwen remained in Doriath with Nienor as guests of Thingol and Melian, and were treated with honour. Now it came to pass, when 495 years had passed since the rising of the moon in the spring of the year, there came to Nargothrond 2 elves named Gelmir and Arminas. They were of Angrog's people. But since the Dagor Bragokalach, they dwelt in the south with Curan the shipwright. From their far journeys they brought tidings of a great mustering of orcs and evil creatures under the eaves of the Orodreth and in the pass of Sirion, and they told also that Ulmo had come to Círdan, giving warning that great peril drew high to Nargothrond. "Hear the words of the Lord of Waters," they said to the king. Thus he spoke to Círdan the shipwright. "The evil of the north has defiled the springs of Sirion, and my power withdraws from the fingers of the flowing waters. But a worse thing is yet to come forth. Say therefore to the Lord of Nargothrond, shut the doors of the fortress, and do not go abroad. Cast the stones of your pride into the loud river, that the creeping evil may not find the gate." Orodreth was troubled by the dark words of the messengers. But Túrin by no means hearkened to these counsels, and least of all would suffer the great bridge to be cast down, for he was become proud and stern, and would order all things as he wished. Soon afterwards, Handir, lord of Brethil, was slain, for the orcs had invaded his land, and Handir gave them battle, but the men of Brethil were worsted and driven back into their woods. And in the autumn of the year, biding his hour, Morgoth loosed upon the people of Narog the great host that he had long prepared, and Glaurung, the Uroloki, passed over Untitled, and came thence into the north vales of Sirion, and there did great evil. Under the shadows of the Orodreth he defiled Ithel-Ivrin, and thence he passed into the realm of Nargothrond, and burned Talath-Dirnin, the guarded plain between Narog and Teiglin. Then the warriors of Nargothrond went forth, and tall and terrible on that day looked Túrin, and the heart of the host was upheld, as he rode on the right hand of Orodreth. The greater far was the host of Morgoth than any scouts had told, and none but Túrin, defended by his dwarf mask, could withstand the approach of Glaurung. And the elves were driven back and pressed by the orcs into the field of Tummahalad, between Ginglith and Narog, and there they were penned. On that day all the pride and host of Nargothrond withered away, and Orodreth was slain in the forefront of battle, and Gwindor son of Gwilin was wounded to the death. But Túrin came to his aid, and all fled before him, and he bore Gwindor out of the rout, and escaping into a wood, there lay him on the grass. Then Gwindor said to Túrin, "Lay, bearing pay for bearing, but ill-fated was mine, and vain is thine, for my body is marred beyond healing, and I must leave Middle-earth. And though I love thee, son of Húrin, yet I rue the day that I took thee from the orcs. But for thy prowess and thy pride, still I should have love and life, and Nargothrond should yet stand a while. Now if you love me, leave me. Haste thee to Nargothrond, and save Finduilas. And this last I say to thee, she alone stands between thee and thy doom. If thou fail her, it shall not fail to find thee. Farewell." Then Túrin sped back to Nargothrond, mustering such of the rout as he met with on the way, and the leaves fell from the trees in a great wind as they went, for the autumn was passing to a dire winter. But the host of the orcs and Glaurung the dragon were there before him, and they came suddenly, ere those that were left on guard were aware of what had befallen on the field of Tummahalad. In that day the bridge over Narog proved an evil, for it was great and mightily made, and could not swiftly be destroyed. And the enemy came readily over the deep river, and Glaurung came in full fire against the doors of Felagund, and overthrew them, and passed within. And even as Túrin came up, the dreadful sack of Nargothrond was well nigh achieved. The orcs had slain or driven off all that remained in arms, and were even then ransacking the great halls and chambers, plundering and destroying. But those of the women and the maidens that were not burned or slain, they had herded on the terraces before the doors, as slaves to be taken into Morgoth's thraldom. Upon this ruin and woe Túrin came, and none could withstand him or would not, though he struck down all before him, and passed over the bridge, and hewed his way towards the captives. And now he stood alone, for the few that followed him had fled. But in that moment Glaurung issued from the gaping doors, and lay behind between Túrin and the bridge. And suddenly he spoke by the evil spirit that was in him, saying,
"Hail, son of Húrin, well met."
Then Húrin sprang about, and strode against him, and the edges of Glaurung shone as with flame. But Glaurung withheld his blast, and opened wide his serpent eyes, and gazed towards Túrin. Without fear Túrin looked into them, as he raised up the sword, and straightway he fell under the binding spell of the lidless eyes of the dragon, and was halted moveless. Then for a long time he stood as one graven of stone. And they too were alone, silent before the doors of Nargothrond. But Glaurung spoke again, taunting Túrin, and said,
"Evil have been all thy ways, son of Húrin. Thankless fostering, outlaw, slayer of thy friend, thief of love, usurper of Nargothrond, captain foolhardy, and deserter of thy kin. As thralls thy mother and thy sister live in Dorlomin, in misery and want. Thou art arrayed as a prince, but they go in rags, and for thee they yearn, but thou carest not for that. Glad may thy father be to learn that he hath such a son, and as learn he shall."
And Túrin, being under the spell of Glaurung, hearkened to his words, and he saw himself as in a mirror, misshapen by malice, and loathed that which he saw. And while he was yet held by the eyes of the dragon in torment of mind, and could not stir, the orcs drove away the herded captives. And they passed nigh to Túrin and crossed the bridge. Among them was Finduilas, and she cried out to Túrin as she went, but not until her cries and the wailing of the captives was lost upon the northward road did Glaurung release Túrin, and he might not stop his ears against that voice that haunted him after. Then suddenly Glaurung withdrew his glance and waited. Túrin stirred slowly as one waking from a hideous dream. Then coming to himself, he sprang upon the dragon with a cry, but Glaurung laughed and said,
"If thou wilt be slain, I will slay thee gladly. But small help will that be to Morwen and Nienor. No heed did thou give to the cries of the elf woman. Wilt thou deny also the bond of thy blood?"
But Túrin, drawing back his sword, stabbed at the dragon's eyes, and Glaurung, coiling back, swiftly towered above him and said,
"Nay, at last thou art valiant beyond all that I have met. And they lie who say that we are apart, do not honor the valor of our foes. See now, I offer thee freedom. Go to thy king. If thou canst, get thee gone. And if elf or man be left to take and make tales of these days, then surely in scorn they will name thee, if thou spurnest this gift."
Then Túrin being yet bemused by the eyes of the dragon, as he were treating with a foe that could no pity, believed the words of Glaurung. And turning away, he sped over the bridge. But as he went, Glaurung spoke behind him, saying in a fell voice,
Haste thee now, son of Húrin, to Dolomin. Or perhaps the orcs shall come before thee once again. And if thou tarry for Finduilas, then never shalt thou see Morwen again, and never at all shalt thou see Nienor, thy sister, and they shall curse thee.
But Túrin passed away on the northward road, and Glaurung laughed once more, for he accomplished the errand of his master. Then he turned to his own pleasure, and sent forth his blast, and burned all about him. But all the orcs were busy in the sack he routed forth, and drove them away, and denied them their plunder, even to the last thing of worth. The bridge then he broke down, and cast into the foam of the Narog. And being thus secure, he gathered all the hoard and riches of Felagund, and heaped them, and lay upon them in the innermost hall, and rested a while. And Túrin hasted along the ways to the north, through the lands now desolate between Narog and Teiglin, and the fell winter came down to meet him. For in that year snow fell, ere autumn was past, and spring came late and cold. Ever, it seemed to him, as he went, that he heard the cries of Finduilas, calling his name by wood and hill, and great was his anguish, but his heart being hot with the lies of Glaurung, and seeing ever in his mind the orcs burning the house of Húrin, or putting Morwen and Nienor to torment, he held on his way, and turned never aside. This is the summary now. At Nargothrond, Gwindor is recognized by Finduilas, whom he loved. Túrin is welcomed by Orodreth, and he wins renown. Finduilas' heart is turned to Túrin. Gwindor warns Finduilas of his doom and the curse of Morgoth against the children of Húrin. Orodreth takes Túrin as a counselor, and Nargothrond flourishes and grows in might. Gwindor falls into dishonor because he continually opposes the counsel of Túrin. Morwen and Nienor at last flee to Doriath, but find that Túrin is gone. Orodreth receives a message from Ulmo that peril draws near to Nargothrond, but Túrin in his pride does not heed the warning. Orodreth and Túrin lead the elves into battle against Glaurung and the hosts of Morgoth, but they are routed, and Orodreth and Gwindor are killed. Nargothrond is sacked. Túrin encounters Glaurung, who binds him under a spell and accusingly recounts to Túrin all his wrongdoing, mingled with half-truths and lies. Glaurung sends Túrin on a false errand to rescue his mother and sister.
Okay, at the beginning of that reading, you couldn't read like a sentence.
Well, I was tongue-tied.
And then by the end, it was like an Emmy Award-winning performance.
Seriously.
It was tongue-tied. Like, I need to warm up. Like,
yeah. It was very impressive, and I part of me was like, how is he not like
I think you started the dragon voice and didn't realize how much dragon voice was in this reading.
I knew there was a lot, actually. I did know there was a lot, but I just thought, go big or go bigger,
Yeah, because you started the voice. I was like, oh, this is so good. And then I looked a little forward, and like every paragraph has this long part with Glaurung in it.
Yeah, I've been reading around this story in some of the other writings, and from this book, which if you listen to our bonus episode, you heard me and Greg talk from this book called J.R. Tolkien, Author of the Century by Tom Shippey. We're not paid to promote this, but it's excellent. A very good summary of the Túrin story.
But Thomas Shippey and publisher, if you'd like to give us a little kickback, we're open.
Yeah, why not? We'll take it. We'll take it. Yeah, very good book. I'm convinced that this story is just like awesome. It's the best story. I love it. It's the richest.
Let's break into it. Let's crack it open.
So let's just start with. I think one thing that's going to be really helpful for us to do more often, as there's lots of characters, is just get a lay of the land of the main characters in this. So we have Túrin, and we have
Gwindor.
Who are they? Who would like to talk?
Okay, I'm going kind of off of memory here, so forgive me, listeners, if I err in this. But Gwindor was someone who was captured and even made a thrall in Angband with other elves.
And Gwindor's an elf.
He eventually did escape, and he's the one who he encountered Beleg, and he helped Beleg to go to rescue Túrin, and then he was actually with Beleg when Túrin killed him.
Right.
And he kind of was weakened in a weakened state when he encountered them after his thraldom, and so he's kind of he's an interesting figure because he was a great warrior once, but he's kind of
A has-been.
Yeah, he's a has-been.
He's got He's got a dad bod now, and people like don't.
And you kind of see that in this bit too, when Túrin's like the strong, and his counsel to Orodreth, I think, is all like, let's go to war, let's flex our strength and show Morgoth what we mean business, and he's like more cautious because he's fallen in battle in a certain sense. But I think that's kind of Gwindor.
So we need to talk about Túrin as well, just a little bit more about him, just to remind people. But and we could do that now, or we could talk about Gwindor's beef towards Túrin.
Let's talk about Túrin.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, maybe Cameron should go ahead.
No, I don't know what to say about Túrin.
Just tell us, who is he and why is he?
He is son of Húrin, who is captured by Morgoth.
Yep.
And Morgoth put him on top of Thangorodrim and gave him his eyes or something like that, so he could see all the torment he's going to issue on his family. So Túrin has a sad past, sad family, and he was an outlaw who developed a relation or a friendship with Beleg Strongbow, and they were known as the Helm and the Bow.
And Beleg is a man or an elf?
Beleg is an elf, I think.
Aye.
Greg's giving me the approval.
You could say
and that is why it's so tragic that Túrin killed Beleg on accident with Anglakel.
Yeah.
In a moment of darkness, storms raging, he gets woken up and his foot is pricked by the sword, and he turns and kills Beleg. So he just tragedy after tragedy, and now Gwindor's kind of his only friend, but Gwindor is kind of just a half person. Like Gwindor is kind of just a shell of his former self, it seems.
Yeah.
So Gwindor has a little bit of beef towards Túrin there. There's a little bit of like either a power struggle or jealousy over Finduilas. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, he sees Finduilas loves Túrin, right?
Yeah. Well, also,
And
like,
it's
their
funny.
fighting styles are different, right?
Túrin likes open battlefields and just like, give me a sword.
Give me a sword.
Let
Let's
me run it.
melee. Yeah. Is Gwindor more of the sort of like from a distance kind of?
I know that the elves of Nargothrond are, because it mentions.
Is he a Nargothrond?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
This is his home, right?
I believe so.
So there might be tension there in the council that Túrin's attempting to give.
Well, and that's true too, in that Nargothrond is one of the 3 hidden cities, right? Along with
I forgot
Menegroth.
that, Greg. So I'm glad you said that. Actually,
well, Menegroth is one in Doriath, right? Yeah. And then Gondolin, and that's kind of how they all operate. Is that they rely on secrecy and hiddenness from Morgoth versus open warfare, and pretty much every time they've tried to meet Morgoth in battle, they've had very little success in that front. So that makes sense. That I think in some sense Túrin, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm curious what you guys think. He's kind of like one of those tragic heroes who has nothing left to lose, you know? He's just kind of desperate and willing to just run out into battle because he really has nothing to live for. He just has like this darkness surrounding him, and he has vengeance, vengeance for Morgoth and all the evildoers, but he's not really. He's a pretty sad figure, so he's not like. Whereas I think Gwindor, on the other hand, because of his love for Finduilas, he wants to be successful in battle and like return home. Whereas Túrin is more like, if I die, I die. I'm just going to go out in a blaze eventually.
You know what's
kind of
interesting
resigned to that.
Is with Finduilas, or however it's said,
Finduilas.
She,
Findy
against her will, falls in love with Túrin.
Yeah.
And Gwindor is trying to convince her, like, you got to marry an elf, okay? I love you. I'm an elf. And then he says, this man is not barren.
Yes, I highlighted that.
Beren, the character. So it's cool that there's like a lore around Barren, and there's probably like all these elf women like swooning over the idea of like finding a Baron. It's like I don't know, like the original Twilight. It's like marrying a vampire.
Yeah, I mean,
but there's lore around it. It's like he's not a Baron. Don't think of him as this man who's gonna like.
I'm getting jealousy vibes in him, in Gwindor.
Well, I think there is some of that, but I think there is a bit of reason. You know, he's trying to protect his home. I think in some sense, Túrin is never going to be as invested in the welfare of Nargothrond as Gwindor is, because that's his home. And he knows what it's like to be taken captive. And so there is like this struggle. There's multiple layers to the tension between them. It's the jealousy of this love. It's the, it's like, don't I know what's best for my home? Why does this outsider have to teach us?
Which it all comes out. I don't know if we want to skip here, but it's very fitting when he dies ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's
like, Túrin is not rescuing him from death, but taking him out of battle to safety, and then Gwindor just lets him have it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, especially as like Gwindor had saved Túrin, right? Like he was with what's his face, Beleg. So he saves him and like wishes that like actually I wish I just kind of left you there.
It's so sad.
Yeah. And now it's because of crap because of you.
Well, it's because of Túrin's prowess and his pride. That's what he says. Like he's so good.
Yeah.
And so prideful.
Yeah.
That I would still have love in life. And and a big part of his Nargothrond should stand a while because in his pride he didn't want to defend it like Ulmo told him.
Right. That's a good point.
Yeah, there's a great insight in this Shippy book about basically every time the elves take into their kingdom a man, that kingdom falls. So each kingdom prospers for, this is a quote from Shippy, Each kingdom prospers for a while, even a long while, till each is located by and willingly or unwillingly acts as a host to a mortal, a man, respectively Beren, Túrin, and Tuor. And these are the different hidden kingdoms: Doriath, Nargothrond, and Gondor.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting thing, and maybe it is this like man's sort of hunger for power and it's his pride in like, no, I'm good at things. Look at me.
Impatience too.
Impatience, and the ability to kind of win over these almost self-sufficient beings, and somehow like worm their way in there and clearly like almost spellbindingly. Like it's you're so good at what you do that like, yes, everybody's gonna love you. And then even for Finduilas or whatever her name is,
we're getting worse at pronouncing.
Yeah, let's just say something different each time. Finduilas, she against her will like falls in love with this man. And so it's like it's chaotic.
It's interesting. It's kind of like the flash in the pan, you know. And that's how men are in this world. They're only around for a time. Although, let me mention this. I was thinking about this as we read, because we don't hear a lot of year markers in this, but we know that when Fëanor first came back to Middle Earth, that was around the time that was the beginning of the First Age, when the sun and the moon first rose, right around that time, right? And it did say that this was the 495th year since the rising of the moon.
Yo, when did it say that?
That's at the very bottom of 211. So it's funny because in my mind, these kingdoms or these great cities of the elves have like stood the test of time in their hiddenness.
Yeah.
They've lasted millennia, it feels like, but it's only been 495 years, which is
it's a good point.
Not that long in the big picture, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's longer than America's been alive,
will America last to 495 years? We don't know.
Place your bets.
Over under 495 and a half years.
All right, next character. Let's go to Finduilas. Who is she? Finduilas.
Oh, I thought you were joking because we just talked about her. You want to know?
We didn't tell her about her family history.
Well, there's not much more to say, is there? She has a very small part in this.
No, there is. I mean,
Gwindor's girlfriend.
She's what? Sorry, Gwindor's girlfriend.
Daughter of Orodreth.
Okay, daughter of Orodreth. Okay, and Orodreth.
All right, let's move on to Glaurung, everyone.
No. Wait. These are important. Tolkien wants us to know.
Okay.
About characters.
Well, cool. As far as I'm aware right now, all there is to know about her is that she's the daughter of Orodreth.
Okay.
Gwindor loves her, but she loves Túrin.
And that's all we know right now.
That's all we know right now, right?
So Orodreth, is there anything special about Orodreth? Is he like a king? Yes, he is king of Nargothrond. And he did, am I right in thinking he did die? We just passed over his death, right?
Yeah. He did just die in this reading, yeah, that's right.
Because a lot of people died, which is the theme of this book. Orodreth was slain in the forefront of the battle, and Gwindor, son of Gwilyn, was wounded to the death. Yeah. So this is sad times.
Yeah.
Okay, now we can talk about your beloved Glaurung.
Cool.
Or as he's called in the common tongue, Glaurung.
I love this power of the dragons in Tolkien's work. It's probably not original with him, but I just love that the dragons aren't just huge beasts who spew fire from their open mouths, but they can lure you into a spell. That is like a terrifying concept.
Mm-hmm. And it's like proper magic, but it sort of harkens to, you know, there's like in even in our world, there's like mythology of and some truth to it too, that certain serpents, well, there are serpents that do sort of bind their prey into a spell before they strike. You know, thinking of cobras, that kind of stuff that will do a dance that will mesmerize some poor little rodent that will then get struck. So it's that thing, but like massive and like proper magic. Like Túrin is completely spellbound by Glaurung, and not only is he like frozen and forced to listen to Glaurung, it's almost like there's sort of a Jedi mind trick that's happening over him, where he can't reason out of the words that are being spoken, and that's really scary.
Yeah.
I like this reading of the featured Glaurung a lot. I think there was a lot there to unpack about who he is and how he operates and what motivates him. And I think he reminds me of a number of different fictional and characters and such. But even like his polite greeting, in a sense, "Hail, son of Húrin, well met." I mean, it's like it's like maybe sarcastic, or it's a mock in a sense, but it reminds me of the Nazi colonel in Inglourious Bastards that's played by Christoph Waltz, who is like,
not seen that.
He's incredibly cultured and like very he's like evil, like truly evil,
like Thrawn in Star Wars.
Sure. I am like only vaguely familiar with Thrawn, but I think you're right. Yeah, where he's sophisticated, incredibly intelligent, strategic, but also just like
polite,
bitterly cold, and will wield that to whatever
charity.
advantage, right? There's no charity in him.
It's like politeness, but it's like there's zero charity in it.
Right. So that's part of Glaurung. But something else too in this this kind of like spell. This is pretty interesting. This is at the bottom of 213, where Túrin is just kind of petrified. He's there, and then Glaurung speaks again, taunting him. And what he does here is he lays out all the things that Túrin has done wrong.
Yeah.
And some other things that are kind of not really true, like deserter of thy kin. That's not exact. I mean, there's like some truth in that because he did run off as an outlaw, but he never left his family really by choice. It was kind of unwillingly. He was taken to Doriath as a young man, young boy, I think. And then this is definitely a lie. As thralls, thy mother and thy sister live in Roman. That's a lie.
Yeah.
And so there's this kind of, it's interesting. What it reminded me of, actually, this is kind of, I don't know, we can unpack this a little bit, but it reminds me of the Gospel of John, chapter 4, where Jesus meets the woman at the well and talks to her, and he does something similar, but it's with mercy, not malice, where he lays out all the wrong that she's done. Yeah, he like tells her who she is and what she's done, but with mercy, and like tells, and this is like the opposite of that, which is a figure in Christianity, the accuser, right? And that's what the devil does. It's not with mercy that he tells you what he did, it's with accusation, and he tears you down. And that's exactly what he does to Túrin here, where
it's interesting because Glaurung, he almost sees that this is the way he can defeat Túrin, because he withholds, or maybe he wants to play with his food. Maybe that's all it is.
Yeah, that's it.
But he stops his breath. Like there's a line that says he doesn't breathe this fire at Túrin, and decides to look at him and speak to him. So it's like a tactic to lead Túrin into despair instead of fighting him with
and I think,
power.
In a certain sense, there's something more destructive in that than simply slaying him or melting him with fire. And I think that's captured in this line at the top of 214, where it says, "And Túrin, being under the spell of Glaurung, hearkened to his words, and he saw himself as in a mirror, misshapen by malice, and loathed that which he saw." This is it's like this twisting of his own self-perception, and now he sees himself as if in a funhouse mirror, just like distorted, and seeing only his flaws and none of his virtues, and he's just in despair in this.
Yeah,
I think that's like so much worse than simply killing him.
Well, I think there's a bigger plan. I think Glaurung. I'm not sure if the motive is directly from Morgoth, if he has specific instructions from Morgoth to do this one thing, or he has this, Cameron calls it playing with his food sort of motive. But his intention is to deceive Túrin and then set him on a fool's errand.
Right.
Because he knows that the disaster is foreboding. The disaster that's going to come is going to be a worse death to Túrin than death itself. In fact, this is confirmed for us when Glaurung repeats a lie after saying he's not going to kill him. If thou wilt be slain, I will slay thee gladly, but small help will that be to Morwen and Nienor. No heed did thou give to the cries of the elf. To the elf woman. Wilt thou deny also the bond of thy blood? So it's like he's playing into the lie that he's already told him, and he's fueling it to send him on this like errand.
And to conclude that, it says, but Túrin passed away on the northward road, and Glaurung laughed once more, for he had accomplished the errand of his master.
Yes.
So that is why he was talking to him.
And I do think that fits what we've heard, and that this is part of the curse on the children of Húrin, that it's not just that, like, this is part of that doom that Húrin is subjected to, that he has to witness just the falling apart and despair of his children, and so in that sense, it would be bad enough to see them die, but it would be much worse for Húrin to see them kill each other, or in mistakes and in deceit, having been deceived, they just fall lower and lower into darkness. Poor Húrin. What did he do? He just fought in a battle. And,
I know.
I mean, okay, maybe this is one point that we could go into at a later time, but many of the high elves and the kings and everybody, they just died valiantly in battle. But Húrin, for some reason, has to endure just this torture. I wonder if there's something about that with men. With men are capable of certain great things, but also of great evils too, and maybe there's something about Morgoth that fears and hates men in a particular way.
Gosh, yeah, I mean, a lot of them receive these curses that then play out, right? There's the curses upon them that it's just horrible, which actually brings a lot of meaning to Strider's struggle, if there was a kind of struggle of like coming to be who he's meant to be as a king. Maybe there's a fear of like the tales of old of the people who had been cursed,
his fathers before him.
Yeah. Okay, we are good. Let's just stop there. So if you like what you hear, go ahead and rate us 3 Silmarils out of 3. Follow us everywhere at Before the Fellowship. Join the Discord discussion, and send any comments or questions to beforethefellowship@gmail.com. Join us next week as we read the greatest story you've never heard, The Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien.